I'd just like to welcome you all to the Dental Board of California's quarterly meeting. Today is Friday, the 24th. If you could all take your seats, please. I want to ask all of us to please turn off our cell phones to silent and make sure they're off the table so we can avoid feedback noise. You may notice that board members are accessing their laptop during the meeting. They're using the laptop solely to access board materials that are in electronic format. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a time limit may be imposed. And we ask that all speakers please stay on topic. And if a time limit is determined to be necessary, keep your comments within that time limit. I would now like to call the meeting to order and ask Dr. Wu to call the roll.
Witcher.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Wu's here. Afriat.
Here.
Burton. Here. Chan.
Here.
Chappelle Ingram.
Here.
Dawson.
Here.
Forsyth.
Here.
Lai.
Here.
Lay.
Here.
Morrow.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So we'll move right into the Executive Officer Report. Karen.
Good morning. My name is Karen Fisher, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California. I'm going to start with the Breeze report. You realize that we have actually been functioning under the new computer system for approximately 13 months. Staff has done a really good job of navigating through the number of challenges that have come with changing over to this new computer system. Daily, we do have challenges. Currently, we have about 40 outstanding change requests. So every time we find a glitch in the system, it needs to go, it needs to be recorded with the department, and only if it really affects our ability to do business immediately is it expedited. Otherwise, it's put into a queue for updates that occur approximately every 6 weeks. So we're working through the challenges, and I'd say that most of our staff are very well trained, and we continue to get questions from licensees when they call and have an issue, and we walk them through that. So that seems to be working. Just to let you know that the department prioritizes the changes per 6 weeks, and while we may have many, we need to say which ones are more urgent than the others. For example, something as simple as when we get new elected officers and the signatures on the licenses change, they change on approximately 11 license types. Those are each considered in and of themselves a change. So rather than pulling 11 license types together as one change, we actually are charged, if you will, for 11 different changes. That's just the way it is. So it may take 2 cycles of changes to get through just updating the signatures on the licenses. I know, crazy, but we're working through it. As I said, there are approximately 40 outstanding change requests. Our major fee increase is going through the process, and we're trying to determine whether or not we'll be able to institute all the fee increases at the same time. So we're working with the department to ensure that the ones that would gain the most revenue to the board would be first priority, and then the other ones would follow appropriately. An update on our email addresses. So you'll recall that through our sunset review legislation, we did receive the statutory authority to be able to require licensees, both dentists and RDAs and EFs, to submit their email addresses. This will give the board an opportunity to be able to correspond with licensees more quickly through email. Now, the process is that when the renewal notices go out, there's an insert within the renewal notices letting the licensees know that we now are requiring this information. So of the 41,000 licensees that we currently have on the books, we've collected email addresses for 29,000 of them. Now, we would need to go through about a cycle, a 2-year cycle and a half, to catch everybody up. So we're getting there. It's going well. We also take the opportunity that if anybody's updating an address change or anything else on their license, staff is asking for an updated email address. So that's going pretty well. RDAs, we have about 45,000 licensees on the books. We've collected nearly 12,000 email addresses for our RDAs. I'm going to leave my staffing update to the end, so I'm going to jump to the recruitment of the elective facial cosmetic surgery permit credentialing committee member. We haven't had a lot of discussions over the years about our elective facial cosmetic surgery permit program. The committee is comprised of 5 members, a physician and surgeon with a specialty in plastic and reconstructive surgery, who maintains active status on the staff of a licensed general acute care hospital. The second committee member is also a physician and surgeon with a specialty in, I'm going to screw this up, otolaryngology. Is that right? Otolaryngology. That's eyes, right?
No, ears.
Ears. Ears. Oh, okay.
Throat.
Ear, nose, and throat. Okay, that's easy. Ear, nose, and throat. Who also maintains an active license. And then we have 3 oral surgeons on the committee, and 2 of those oral surgeons need to have their permits, the actual EFCS permit. Dr. Brian Wong, who has been on the committee since 2011, has resigned. He is the ear, nose, and throat guy, so we will be in the process of recruiting to fill that position. The committee still has a quorum, even with that vacancy, so they'll continue to do business until we can fill that position. The position, all positions are appointed by the board, so recommendations will be coming forward in the future. The next item is minimum standards for infection control, and of course, in accordance with CCR Title 16, Section 1005C, a subcommittee of the Dental Board and the Hygiene Committee met on February 10th in Sacramento to review and update as necessary the infection control regulations. Staff will be drafting changes to these current minimum standards for infection control, and will bring the language back both to the DHCC and to the Dental Board at the May meetings. We have Noelle Couch here. She'll be giving her update later in the day today. They did discuss the issue of water contamination, and while I can talk about it in general, and I mentioned it, I believe, at our December meeting, they had a clinic in Southern California that had a number of children that went to the hospital who had essentially come down with Mycobacterium abscessus. Some children were very sick, and they essentially, the trail led back to one clinic in Southern California, and the water was tested, CDC was brought in, and they were found to have contaminated water. So the question came up and was discussed in this infection control subcommittee about recommendations to move forward, and they will be bringing language back in May that essentially mirrors more specifically recommendation that the guidelines of the CDC be followed. And we can talk a little bit more like that. I don't know if, Noelle, you had planned to talk about that in your update, so Noelle will be able to give you more information. Also, yesterday we mentioned that Assemblymember Daley had introduced legislation that will be coming forward to address contaminated water. So the Legislative Committee will be reviewing that legislation and reporting on that in May. The next item is implementation of Senate Bill 482 relating to the Controlled Substance Utilization Review and Evaluation System, otherwise known as CURES. So licensees by statute were required, or the statute became effective January 1st, that requires licensees who write prescriptions for controlled substances to, I'm going to back off of this. So last year, by July 1st, all licensees who write for controlled substances were required to register with CURES. The requirement for this year, also effective July 1st, is that licensees who write for controlled substances will be required to actually check CURES prior to writing the prescriptions. There are other details of the legislation which will also say then they'll review that prescription again every 4 months thereafter. The only update really is if any of our licensees or board members were registered on CURES with the initial CURES system of 1.0 on March 1st, that's going away. So I hope that if you haven't registered on CURES 2.0, you should be doing that. And that information is going up on our website to other licensees also. A reminder about Form 700, it's actually due on April 3rd this year. And there are a number of board members who have not completed that filing, so I would just encourage you to do so. There are pretty hefty penalties, especially since it is electronic filing now. The penalties are very difficult to waive or appeal, so I would hope that you will move forward with filing as quickly as you can. We are able to check periodically on who's done their filings, so we'll send out reminder notices. But there are still a number of board members that need to complete that. And then that brings us into the required board member training. Of course, we were going to be, staff is actually going to be closely monitoring this. This is a mandatory year for the department for sexual harassment prevention training. So we'll be sending out the notices for those of you, the links. All of these trainings can be taken essentially online at your convenience, except for the board member orientation. And I believe we have 2 members scheduled for the March orientation. Is it Yvette and Dr. Chan? I'll be there also with you. So there are 4 board member orientations scheduled this year: March 21st, June 20th, September 27th, and November 15th. So if in the process the governor does reappoint those of you who are in your grace, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for the board member orientation either this year or certainly next year. I'm just about ready to go into my staffing report update, but I'll start off that comment by saying I'm very excited that I have an executive assistant that's starting next week. Yes. And she's coming from OSHPD, which means she's already been an executive assistant. She's familiar with CalAIDers and filing all kinds of things, and she's very experienced. And her name is Jerry, and she'll be coming with us to the May meeting. She's going to help us get organized in terms of tracking the board member training. So you will be receiving notifications about when you last took your ethics course, et cetera, and all these other things. So leave it to us. We're going to get that organized, and we'll let you know what you need to do. So now I'm going to go back to my staffing update, essentially. There's been a lot going on. As I said, I'm anxiously anticipating the start of our executive assistant next week. We have 1 vacancy in the administration unit that Lucy moved over to solid training. She took a promotion, and so we'll be recruiting for a new ledge reg analyst. So our licensing and examination unit has 2.5 vacancies. Now, as we speak, we try to fill these positions as quickly as possible. Interviews are constantly going on, and so this is a high priority to fill as many of these positions as quickly as we can. I can report that dental assisting program at this moment is currently staffed. Keep our fingers crossed that that continues and that we can continue to move forward doing the business of the dental assisting program. I will be interviewing for the permanent position of the Chief of Enforcement. As you all know, Carlos Alvarez has been acting chief for quite a number of months now. So I hope to be able to start conducting those interviews within the next couple of weeks. We also reported that we hired 3 additional positions in our Orange office. Excuse me, I believe we still have 1 vacancy, and we're moving forward with trying to fill that as quickly as possible. We do have 4 vacancies in our investigative analysis unit. That was April Alameda's former unit, and so again, our investigations have slowed down a bit because losing 4 people, many of them left. One of the AGPAs actually took a promotion, so he stayed with us. So we're also trying to fill those as quickly as we can. So the total number of hires and separations since November 1st, 10 hires and 7 separations. It's constantly a dynamic process. It's constantly occurring. That's the nature of the business. As I've mentioned many times before, even with changes to the board, changes to executive officers, changes to legal staff, it's what we do. But I'd also like to say that it's amazing how much work we get done, even with everything changing like that. And I'm very proud to be part of that process, as challenging as it is. And that leads me to somewhat of a more emotional comment. As you know, the board was notified that Spencer Walker has been reassigned, and Spencer has been a part of our dental family. Actually, his first dental meeting was, I believe, in August of 2012. And that was just a few months before I became executive officer. So we were newbies together. And we teased that we were actually twins separated at birth, though I'm easily 10 years older than he is, but I'm going to go with his age. So it's a difficult time. I believe I notified the board that the legal department has lost, not lost, but 3 attorneys have left to take promotions or jobs elsewhere or to decide to stay home with children. So they're in a bit of a bind. And what has been stated is that because the dental board is running so well, that right now. So this is
broken, break it.
this is our wonderful Spencer. I want to take the opportunity to introduce our incoming legal, Michael Santiago. If Michael, would you stand up? So I think people didn't realize you were in the room yesterday. Has a very difficult act to follow. I think he knows that. He's worked with Spencer a number of years. So Michael, we welcome you. Before I go on to say, Spencer, you know how I feel. I'm not going to look at you because I put the tissues by you and I can't reach that far. It's been awesome. You've been awesome. Your response time, you are always available to answer any questions that I have. You are so easily accessible and get back to us. I feel that we are very much in sync, and that's what's made my job so easy, and couldn't have done it without you. wouldn't have wanted to do it without you. So you will be missed. And I know that you're going to be screaming in probably 2 minutes, but, and that you're a guy that doesn't want a lot of fanfare and hates to be in the public eye, but I think that we need to really give board members the opportunity to at least say a few things, should they choose to do so, and you're just going to have to sit there and accept all the love that's going to be coming your way. So you have a box of tissues there. And I got through that actually without.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm proud of myself. So I'm going to hand it off to, I'm going to actually hand it off to Dr. Witcher first.
Well, I know I speak for all of us, and it's great having, especially as chair, I'm going to miss him because, as we know, he's been really just exemplary in making sure our meetings stay on track and on topic. And that, you know, we've done better at times, we've done worse at times, but with Spencer, it's been consistently better every time. And I think that extends through all the operations. I just, you know, even though, you know, decisions have been made, I've found that even though people change hats and go to different places, our ways often cross again. I know Fran and I remember very well when we came on as new members, and Spencer was with the executive office, and we were greeted by this very dapper gentleman with the folded kerchief and everything, and we're sternly admonished about how we would be reported to the appointing authority if we stepped out of line. Little did we know that he would assume a position of authority with our board later on. So I'm sure we haven't seen the last of him, and he will be greatly missed. And, you know, things have a way of coming around, so we can all hope for that. Thank you.
Spencer, you have been a friend, you've been a mentor to all of us, you've kept us out of trouble, you've kept us on the straight and narrow, and you've done that with grace and a sense of humor. You've allowed us to accomplish what we have with your leadership, your professionalism, and you've also shared your gift of hospitality. There was a dinner that we're still passing pictures around among ourselves because it was so special. And I just want to add my thanks, and I know I'm speaking for the board when I say you've made us better than we are. Thank you.
Dr. Morrow.
Spencer, this is a little bit uncomfortable to say in public, but I will be uncomfortable so that I can say it. Since the very first day that you joined the board, I have felt a special connection with you. I think you and I have shared life experiences that we have in similarity, and have comforted each other in times of stress. And you know, you for me, and I think for the board, have been both a keel that stabilizes us and a rudder that stirs us that steers us at the same time. And I think that's a great combination. I hope that our lives can continue to connect in the future, and I'm looking forward to a continued relationship with you, even when it is not as the legal counsel for the board, but as two human beings that share life. Thank you for being you.
Steve.
So I've been so grateful that my relationship with Spencer has grown into a friendship, which I'm going to dishonor, because what I should do if I really care about Spencer is not say things that will continue to make him uncomfortable here this morning. But what I do, I just want to say two things. I spend my full-time career dealing with government officials and government offices and bureaucrats, and I've met a lot of excellent people, and I think public employees get a bad rap, and just seeing Karen and her staff is a real illustration of that. But I can count on one hand the number of exemplary public employees I have met which are in that category that Spencer is in. And I really think that that should be honored because he treats his state job like he is head of a law firm that has passion about taking good care of his clients. And I really respect and appreciate that. The other thing, much to my colleagues and the staff's chagrin, is I don't take no for an answer very easily. And unlike all of you except for Fran, I'm not appointed by the governor, I'm appointed by the speaker, Fran by the pro tem. And we have an important issue that's weaving its way through the legislature right now in pediatric anesthesia. And the person who has me sitting here, his office has taken a great interest in this issue. And so I intend with, there's nothing on our agenda today, but maybe by the board's silence not objecting to it, I'll have my colleagues' support. I intend to go to the speaker's office and I need to say too, because I've had a dealings with Michael over the years, no reflection on Michael and welcome to our family. I think it's the wrong time. And while I don't hold a lot of hopes for being successful, I intend to say to the speaker's office, if you care about this issue, continuity is important, and we really think this is not the right time to make a change. So those are my intentions. I wanted to share it with my colleagues in hope of having your support for that. And while this is likely, thank you for your service, Spencer, it might also just be thank you for all the great work you've done for us and that we hope it continues.
Fran?
Bruce, first of all, I want to remind you that at that meeting, he said, even on weekends, you can't wear jeans.
I like that.
Yeah.
Actually, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I have to say that because I always swim upstream, I wear jeans. The other thing I wanted to say to you, Spencer, is I won't sing it, but I'm the character in Dreamgirls. I'm telling you, you're not going. You're the best thing I ever had. Okay. But I also wanted to echo a part of what Mr. Afriat said, and that is that in addition to pediatric anesthesia, you've worked so closely with the Dental Assisting Forum on the workshops that have been, what, 1.5 years, almost 2 years now. And there are other issues that are coming up that are important to me as Reg Chair of regulation packages, that it's just not only not the time, but not fair to someone to say, here, in addition to regular board business, come up the stream with all of this. And so what I would like is for the board to send a letter to outline these issues, but also to say, with all due respect, you didn't ask us. We may have said something different, and we're saying something different.
Boy, I'm going to cry. Really. You know, when I came on in 2013, May of 2013, I believe, when I finished with the meeting, I came home, and as always, I report to my husband the first day I was here. And the only thing that I actually said to him for that day, besides that, you know, I'm on a steep learning curve, was that I said, but there's this very unique brother, and I said that, brother, that is really inspiring to me. And because not only, Spencer, you've taught me some things that you don't know that you've taught me. And you've taught me to really pay closer attention. You've taught me to sit up straight. because I sometimes have bad posture, but that, that really, that helped. But not only that, it's your dedication to the field, it's your dedication to the craft, that you served as a commercial to what it is that we were doing, because you take it so seriously, and the other board members do too. I was focusing in on you, and I shared with my husband that I had never seen anyone that could go to the regs so fast, even though you have an index that you can point to regs, and you have boundaries as well. You keep us in check in such a way that is so professional, but you know how to keep everyone in check. And so I've taken some of those skills and taken them to my own board meeting, always thinking about you, and what would Spencer do? And that has helped me to grow in a professional way in and outside of the dental board. So with that, I really thank you so much, and I'm going to stop because I'll start crying.
Dr. Wu.
I did voice my emotional part about this in an email to you. So I'll be very, very brief because everyone has said pretty much what we're all thinking about him. But in a nutshell, you are the epitome of intelligence, articulation, and compassion, all in one dapper package. And you can cook, and that's great. So thank you. Oh.
Katie.
Well, I said this is not my meeting to come in and accepting the fact that you were leaving, because I was going to do everything I could to make sure that didn't happen. You have made me feel that just because I'm a hygienist on this board, that my thoughts matter. And even though there have been times when I felt like I was kind of spitting in the wind and nobody was listening to me or hearing me, he made me feel that the other members of the board were hearing me, and that has made me feel a sense of importance, and that I matter to this board. So I'm not gonna say goodbye, because I don't think the matter is settled yet, that there are more things to come, there are more decisions to be made. But I do want to let you know how much I appreciate you and your importance to this board.
Well, I won't ask you to respond, so.
I have to respond.
Ah, okay, very good.
Members of the Dental Assistant Council, Sarah, can you please come forward? Come forward, please. You're part of the dental family here. Go ahead and see. I'll make my way around. Let me start over there first. I didn't think I'd be doing this again. Please stand. Thank you so much for supporting me, for being an excellent board member. I remember the first day you did come on this board. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. We've had a wonderful professional relationship and personal relationship since that first day. I love you because of it. And continue to serve the people of California as well as you have, and I know you won't stop. So I love you. Steve. My dear Steve. Yeah, I do want to say, before my first day on the board, I was told, Spencer, there is this board member. He knows Robert's Rules of Order. He believes in amending motions. He knows how to do it. So you better read up and understand Robert's Rules of Order. And you always keep me in line with that. All the time. You're an excellent board member. You always pay attention to everything that affects the dental system community. Public members, in my opinion, with all due respect to the licensees, but public members are here for the consumers. And they want to hear you speak. And you speak all the time. You allow your voice to be heard. You know that some people may not agree with you, but you say it anyway. And you've changed a lot of minds in dealing with issues on this board before votes are taken. You've been a wonderful friend, and I know we will continue to be friends outside. And I love you. I love you, Steve. I told your wife last night that you're like a brother. Absolutely like a brother. I remember sitting on the end when I first came on the board, and I was invited to sit up front next to the president. It was an honor to sit next to all of the presidents on this board that I've had the opportunity to sit there with. To be able to sit there and learn how you think, how the dental system community is so important to you, the practice of dentistry is important to you. And I think that's why you're very interested in education, and we are going to continue to be friends. I didn't know it was going to happen, but your wife is also a friend. A wonderful friend. And I love you both. And I told her last night that we will definitely come and visit you. We will. And I love you.
We're planning a cruise
And Dr. Lai. I'm not supposed to be ill-concentrated. Thank you for everything you've done on this board. I'll say there have been times in closed session when you may not necessarily agree with me, and I respect that. If everyone agreed with me, it would be a big mistake. And I'm always right. And many times, and I'll say that, although you and other members on this board are not attorneys, well, there's one attorney, but she's not here today. You got more authoritative, and you can focus on the issues such that when you challenge me, I listen, and I learn. And you're wonderful to this board. And if your first term is a partial term, please request an additional term there. Please. No, not Bill C. Please. Let's start with Will. Absolutely wonderful. Beautiful person inside and out. Intelligent, articulate. You find that the dental issues that this board is faced with are important issues. And you don't end there. You continue different issues that you want this board to address, because you're out there in the community. You understand what the consumers need, how the dental system community needs to change, what needs to continue, and I love you for that. I love you for the respect. If you give me, I love the compliment. It's just wonderful. And I hope to God that this will not be the last that we will see each other. I hope that outside of here, that we'll have friendship. And I will be visiting you.
Yes,
older
you know where I
person.
live.
I absolutely do, and I will be there.
Okay.
And I love you.
All right.
Thank you. And Dr. Witcher. I truly believe that you just don't know how smart you are. You were able to deal with issues so quickly in the pediatric report. Some of the things you take on, you tackle it in a way that I could not, even though I have an analytical mind. You as a dentist, correct me if I'm wrong, you aren't necessarily taught to be analytical. You're taught to do what it takes to treat a patient, to protect them, keep them healthy. And to see someone do what you do and take on the issues that you have and deal with it quickly, I'll say accurately, they appear to be accurate. Based on I find that what you do is legally sound. And outside of that, I like the fact that the dentist can weigh in on that. So I tell you, my friend, I'm glad that you have decided to take on a second role as president. This is the second time that I've sat next to you. Unfortunately, it will only been 4 days. And that's why I'm honored the fact that I was able to sit next to you for a whole year when you were president. Thank you so much. And I love to hear you. I don't know what to say. It's been a wonderful, absolutely wonderful. A wonderful board member, a wonderful dentist. And this board needs to continue to be made up of individuals like you and like the others who are here. So I thank you so much. And like I told you, I have family in Bakersfield. Baby, your heart, you have mine. We'll definitely see each other outside of here. And I love you. I love you. The reason why the legislature placed a seat for an RDA on this board is because it's important that they hear from you. There are dental assistants working in offices, dental hygienists working in offices, and if they did not have a seat on this board for people like you, and I don't recall, at least during the years that I've been with this board, a dental assistant RDA serving as vice president. That was a wonderful thing that this board, you deserved it. And I hope that you were going to run for president. I'm glad that you were. Because you were surprised. But I wouldn't need them out. That's right. You made this, you really loved it, you made this real, and it's worth it. And you know I love it. Usually when. Does my head get okay? I can't see it all. Yes. It's very difficult to say you've just been wonderful to me. you across the room, we can just look at each other. And when we do, we start laughing. You have that effect of it. You have that effect of it. And I will remember you forever. And I know for a fact you will.
I didn't want to say anything because I didn't cry, because I want to make sure my makeup looks good for the camera. We'll see.
Remove that conversation we had last night. We're gonna do this forward. Do 4 minutes forward. So, I love you.
No, before you start. You know how much work you caused by having me have to change all my 1-800 call Spencer. And Michael, you should see the list I had for him tomorrow. Now, there is a scene from Star Wars when Yoda leaves. What am I going to do now?
It's been only a short time that you've been on this board. Governor made a very smart decision to place you here. You have excellent history and excellent knowledge, superb knowledge in this field. And sometimes consumers wonder why they place certain individuals on the board. It's clear why the governor placed you on this board. And needed you, and will continue to need you. Thank you so much. We're gonna have no words because we see each other outside of here. Like, even though we see each other outside of here, I want everyone to know that you are loved. The state of California loves you. Consumers love you. Because of what you do for the people of California, what you do for the dental community. Like I said previously, public members, they have a good voice. They're there for the consumers. So I will end it there, like I said, because we get together so often, I know you're going nowhere. And you know how much I love you. I tell you that all the time, whether it's in a text message or on a phone call. So I love you. Yes. That's all. You have been a wonderful asset to the Dental System Council. There was a time when I was wondering if they were going to continue to remain silent or voice their concerns. And it took me no time at all to get in the groove, to focus on those issues that affect the dental assisting community, to bring your knowledge to the council. You've been wonderful in working our way through the dental assisting council regulations. It hasn't been done in years and years. And like I said, you're a wonderful asset. Thank you for coming to my house for that dinner. You're coming back. Was it April? Yes. Yeah. We'll see each other. I love you. can see, there's a lot of affection on this board. We love each other like a family, and I'm so glad that you are part of that family. When members are appointed to whether they're committees, boards, in this case the council, you never know what kind of relationship you're going to have with those people. You don't know if they're going to be standoffish, if they're going to address the issues, or if they just want the position to be on the resume. It's clear that's not what you're doing. Dental assisting is very important to you. Don't you ever stop looking into that. Some people leave the dental assisting community only to return again. And don't stay as long as you can on this dental assisting council. And if vacancies occur on the board, I think you've been an excellent asset. You too, family. So I love you. I've been the attorney assigned to at least half the boards in the department. I've had to work with a lot of executive officers. And I'm telling you, Carol, you are one of a kind. I have never in my life worked for an executive officer like you. Someone who's loving, someone who's smart, someone who the board can just hand it over to you, and they know that you're going to do a fantastic job. When we first met, I wasn't sure how it was going to be, but it was like we knew each other in some other lifetime. Like I said to you, I believe last week, we may have been married in another lifetime. You are that wonderful, that wonderful. And
That's a big deal, folks.
should be dropped in. You have to be dropped here. And I thank you so much, but we will continue to be friends. And for you entrusted this woman with so much responsibility, and she has dealt with it head on. It is a great honor to be able to work side by side with you to deal with those issues. And I love you. I will say never forget you, because we will continue to be friends. And I want to be there. And great. I think you're one of the first to see me cry. During, I remember, board meeting in November 2 years ago, I found out that my nephew was murdered. It was very difficult. You told me to get out of here, and you took over. It wasn't your responsibility, yet you nevertheless did it. And I want to tell you that the trial started the 15th of this month, and I will let you know how it turns out. And I cherish you, my friend. Thank you so much for everything. You've been great. Thank you. That's all I can do right now.
We're not quite done yet. I would like to ask any member of the public who wishes to make a comment to come forward. Now, that's a hard act to follow, so I'm going to give you a pass. But I think I can speak for all of us and for all those who are here, that, you know, we've had just such fine counsel here. It's just so deeply appreciated, and you've heard the exchange here. Okay.
Dr. Witcher, that concludes my report.
Very good.
I did not plan on doing that.
But thank you for that. That was very heartfelt and very deeply appreciated. Okay, so on that note, I will ask us to move forward to item number 10.
Fran Burton wants to ask for a
And I
mini.
shouldn't, I didn't ask that in the form of a question, and I should have. And the question is, if the board is willing to do a letter to the department outlining the things, the work that is yet to be done, and our reasons why we think that this is not a good time for this move.
And would you like to work with other board members on that, or?
I'd be happy to volunteer to work with Fran, it's a good something for everyone.
Do we need a motion, or?
No, you can just direct.
Okay. We'll direct staff to work with you and Mr. Afriat to draft a letter.
I wasn't gonna ask him.
I'm sorry? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Would you like 10 minutes? How long would you like? 15 minutes? I've had a request for 15 minutes, so that's what we'll do. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So now that everybody's got their hotel checkout completed, we'll continue on with the meeting. Next item, number 10, report on California Dental Directors Oral Health Program Advisory Committee. I think was Dr. Lay and Fran who
Yes.
attended that?
Fran's going to do
I think Fran will be giving the report.
Yeah, thank you.
As you know, the California Oral Health Program Advisory Committee has been meeting for some time. So we met at the end of January, and your representatives to that meeting are Hunai and I. The purpose of this meeting was to obtain input on local oral health programs and healthy community concepts to get some, and also, this is the big part of this news, is to get some ideas for using the Tobacco Tax Act of 2016 funds. And what that amounts to is $30 million annually for a state dental program, which is pretty exciting. I won't go through a lot of the details of the meeting, but some of the highlights are that in terms of the 2-year work plan that we've been working on previously, and the state burden document that has to go through the approval process, that document is still with the department for review. The 2-year work program is a work in progress, and the funding for the California Children's Dental Disease Prevention Program, those funds have been received. And then I think the last thing that I would add is there was quite a bit of discussion about the importance of counties working on their county plans. And so to the extent that you are in contact with counties, it's important to do that. And one of the other things that they are looking for is some of the smaller counties to work in conjunction with each other, to partner with each other. We saw some examples of some plans that have already been prepared. And so that's my report for the meeting, and if you had something else to add.
No, I think you covered pretty much, what was discussed at the meeting. I think the only thing I'd like to add is, I know that Kathleen King is not here, but she had mentioned the dental transformation initiative, that's going on at the state. So that's also part of that's one of the main objectives also of the Oral Health Advisory Committee. And the purpose of that is to really increase and improve the oral health access and outcomes, for the children in the state of California.
I have one, in reading over the little Hoover Commission report, I noticed a couple of things. Isn't there a fairly sizable funding increase coming down for this sort of thing in addition to this? I heard there was some sort of an initiative that was like 270.
That's the initiative that actually began the conversation on this process. The tobacco tax was the icing on the cake after that. But that initiative is a work in progress.
Right.
So are you talking about the Medi-Cal waiver 2020?
Yeah,
Because I think that there is that Medi-Cal waiver 2020, the state is to receive a large sum of money from CMS, and it was something like $750 million over, I think, a 5-year project, I think 5-year project. So that is what funds the dental transformation initiative, but that's over a period of time. So that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I know,
And
I
then,
think there was some uncertainty about that actually getting funded.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That was,
Because it does require, the third
right,
Yeah.
So the 1115 waiver.
yeah.
right.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
number could change. We don't know what's going on
The change,
now.
we don't know yet.
Right.
What's going to happen with that. But the good news about the tobacco tax money is that. a part of
Fran, can you use your microphone? I'm sorry.
The good news about the tobacco tax money is that there are a lot of resources for prevention. And that's the big part of the problem that we need to work on, particularly for children.
Yeah, I remember reading that Dca, only about 4% of their budget goes to prevention.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And clearly, we need to, it's hard to know because there's lots of places to spend the money, but one would hope that would be a cost-effective approach. Okay, thank you for that report. Public comment on the report?
Gail Matthew, CDA, trying to decide whether to come up and add more, because what you're discussing are kind of two buckets that are coming to California that we haven't had before, the $30 million, which is so exciting, and then the $750 million from the Dental Transformation Initiative. So I thought I would just give you a tiny bit more information on the DTI, because there's 4 domains, and the first and the third have been going for a little bit, but the second and the fourth just got, in January of this year, just got implemented. The second, domain 2, is about early prevention, which is what you were just talking about, and it is paying for, in a pilot, paying for infant oral health assessments and, caries risk assessments to see if you can actually get the disease early, get the child earlier and stop and prevent the disease. And it's doing some innovative things, and that pilot just began. And actually, the training that's required for that, CDA developed, is called TIKE, Treating Young Kids Every Day, and that just rolled out in February. So that's all brand new. And then domain 4 was innovative projects. They're actually funding innovative projects that were submitted, and they just funded 15 counties for those projects. So new things are rolling out that will be hopefully jointly seeing shifts in disease prevention. I thought I would just add that.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. It's a little overwhelming, kind of knowing where all the moving pieces are. So it's really good to have people keeping tabs on that, because for us, it's a big issue. Thank you. So if there's no additional comment, we'll move on here. Next, we'd like to hear from Linda Schneider, Supervising Deputy Attorney General. regarding implementation of SB 467 complaint prioritization guidelines. And
Actually,
she has with her Greg Salute, who is well-known to us.
I'd just like to correct it. Linda is not going to be really concentrating on the complaint prioritization guidelines, but rather the performance measures that are being implemented with regard to SB 467. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Honorable members of the board and Madam Executive Officer, thank you for inviting us here today. My name is Linda Schneider. I'm the Senior Assistant Attorney General of the Licensing Section of the Office of the Attorney General. And with me today, as has been mentioned, is Supervising Deputy Attorney General Greg Salute. And he is the former liaison for the Dental Board and well-loved and missed, I'm sure. Just before I begin, I'd like to say that I have worked with Staff Counsel Spencer Walker, as well as Michael Santiago. And I have a great deal of respect for Spencer and the work he's done, both for this board and for other boards of the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I have to say that representing many different boards within DCA, I can observe that the Dental Board is extremely well-run, and I think that is attributable in part, at least, to your excellent leadership with your executive officer and Mr. Walker. He's provided a great service to you, and I think his talents perhaps are needed elsewhere even more right now, and that this board will not suffer much for missing him. And you'll be well served by Michael Santiago, who I also know very well. So if your attempt to keep Spencer is unsuccessful, and of course I wish you the best in your efforts, don't feel that you will be without good counsel. Michael will serve you well. Spencer, you're a great attorney and also an incredible person and a sweet guy. So, yes. So today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Attorney General's reporting requirement under Business and Professions Code Section 312.2. I shouldn't take more than about 15 minutes of your time. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the licensing section and what we do, the background that led to the reporting requirement, how case processing occurs, the different components, and then a little bit of detail about the bill and how the Attorney General's office is responding to it. First of all, the mission of the licensing section is to protect the integrity of business and professions in California. And we do that through representation of the licensing agencies in their disciplinary actions and the associated litigation. Our goal is to partner with our client agencies to ensure that licensees are qualified, competent, careful, and honest. And in that way, we try to preserve the integrity of the business and professions. So the licensing section handles the legal work for about 30 different licensing agencies, most within the Department of Consumer Affairs. We process over 5,000 cases per year. The volume of our cases is broken down between all these different agencies and is more than 50% healing arts related by volume. Our biggest client by volume is the Board of Registered Nursing. And for the Board of Registered Nursing, we handle well over 500 cases per year, probably closer to 1,000. For the Dental Board, we handle probably over 100 cases per year, so quite a bit smaller than BRN. The cases are different, even though they're both healing arts clients. The Dental Board cases tend to be more complex with very fact-based investigations, experts. Almost always, the respondents are represented by attorneys. So they're hard fought. They're complex. They pose a great deal of potential consumer harm. So, of course, they're very important to our office. So, leading up to the reporting bill, there was the Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative. I'm sure you're all well aware of it, in 2010, set forth by the Department of Consumer Affairs. The goals of the CPEI are to reduce case processing time to 12 to 18 months. That's 365 to 540 days. The Los Angeles Times articles back in 2009, which have been reiterated over the years, have found that case processing time was just too long to protect consumers. So what we're talking about is nose to tail case processing in a period of time with a goal of 365 to 540 days. It's not an easy thing to achieve. The Department of Consumer Affairs in its sunset review hearings over the past several years from 2011 through 2016 has been reviewed, and the legislature has discussed these time goals over and over again. And just last year alone, they found that many of the DCA agencies are still significantly beyond the goals of the CPEI. The dental board was included in as one of the agencies that is beyond the CPEI goals. From my last review of the report of 2016, the time processing from beginning to end was over 1,100 days. Part of that is the Attorney General's prosecution of the disciplinary cases. So I was just going to go over the components of the process and what comprises that time period. It comes down to 5 things. First is complaint intake, and that's by board staff receives a complaint. So the first component is complaint receipt until review of the complaint. Second is investigation. If the complaint is reviewed and it's determined that an investigation is warranted, that's the second component. For the dental board, that's one of the longest components to do the investigation because, as I mentioned, the cases are complex, they're fact-based. The investigation is rarely a desk investigation. It's more commonly a real fact-based investigation where the investigator has to go out, obtain records, interview witnesses, understand what happened, and then, of course, you have also the expert review, which adds on additional time. Third component is the prosecution of the case. And in the prosecution, the case, after it's been investigated and an expert review has been done, is sent to our office for prosecution. And the prosecution phase includes the Attorney General's office preparing the pleadings in the case. It's sent to the board for the pleading to be filed. Then it's served on the respondent. The respondent has 15 days to send in a notice of defense. Once that's received, then the matter is set for hearing. Then it goes to the Office of Administrative Hearings for the hearing. The hearing is conducted, and then after the hearing is conducted, the administrative law judge prepares the proposed decision. The proposed decision is then returned to the board for the board itself to make a final determination. So all of those things that I just mentioned are comprised in component number 3, which is the prosecution of the case. Then ultimately you have the board's decision-making. And the board has a period of a maximum of 100 days to make that decision after the proposed decision has been received. Of course, cases can be resolved by way of default or settlement as well, but you have an awful lot going into that prosecution period. Then the ultimate decision-making by the board. So that leads to the reporting requirement. Over the years, and I've handed out, I've asked Jocelyn to hand out a synopsis of the Business and Professions Code for you. It the reporting requirement for the Attorney General's office is Section 312.2. And historically, the Department of Consumer Affairs agencies have had a reporting requirement for some period of time under Section 312. So if you look at the handout, it's a two-page double-sided document. Under 312, you'll see the DCA component for reporting. Under subdivision B, it includes three things. Just average number of days from receipt of a complaint to the constituent entity assigning the investigator. Then under number 2, opening investigation until the investigation is conducted and the investigation is closed. And then number 3, the time period from closing an investigation to imposing formal discipline. Now that requirement has been on the books for quite some period of time. It's been adjusted a little bit over time, but pretty much has stayed the same. Then a couple of years ago, 312.1 was added. Now that's a requirement for the Office of Administrative Hearings to report their case processing timelines to the legislature. And if you look at that requirement under subdivision A, they report the number of cases, and under subdivision B, C, and D, 3 averages. So it's a fairly minimalist reporting requirement. The Office of Administrative Hearings has been preparing their report, looks like this, and it reports for each of the different DCA agencies under 312.1. So then the legislature wanting to know more information about this case processing and all of those components that I told you about, in 2015 passed Senate Bill 467, which established the reporting requirement 312.2. So that's on the second page of your handout. And you'll see that it has a subdivision A and B. Subdivision A has 7 parts, so they want us to report 7 different counts of cases. And then subdivision B has 6 parts, and they want us to report 6 different averages for case processing. So I'm just going to walk through a little bit of this and explain to you how we're addressing it. So first of all, you'll note that in 312.2a, it talks about the number of accusation matters. So I'd mentioned that the licensing section handles over 5,000 cases per year. Those are comprised of many different components. There are accusations, statement of issues for denial of license, petitions to revoke probation, post-hearing or post-discipline petitions for reinstatement or for petitions for reduction of penalty. There are writs of mandate. There is civil litigation related to enforcement of subpoenas. There are appeals, quite a few different components, citations, appeal hearings for boards that issue citations. So the Bill 312.2 focuses exclusively on accusations. That's a core disciplinary action taken by licensing agencies. And that's why it was focused to that component only. For purposes of our office, we report on both accusations and combination cases, which are accusations combined with a petition to revoke probation because they have an accusation component. So we have a case management system, a database, and every referral from the board that we receive is logged into our database, and then it will become reportable if it's an accusation or an accusation combined with a petition to revoke probation. So we will report in number 1 on the number of accusation matters referred to us. When the dental board refers a case to us, we'll open it in our case management system and we'll be working on the case. If the board receives another complaint regarding the same respondent, They will send it to us, and we will combine it with the existing case if the existing case is pending. So even though the board may refer us a second matter concerning the same respondent, we will still be counting it as one accusation matter. So if the matter is pending over a period of time and we receive 2, 3, 4, 5 investigations on the same respondent, it will still remain just one case for purposes of reporting. A recent instance of this was a case that was recently resolved by way of surrender, and because it was a surrender and the executive officer receives surrenders, you may not be aware of it, but there was a dentist by the name of Sherry Worth who was prosecuted over a period of, I think it took 3 years to finally resolve the case, perhaps. And there were a multiple of complaints until she finally did simply surrender her license before going to hearing. So in our system, that would be reported as one case, not the 6 that we received complaints about. Then under number 2, the number of accusation matters rejected. It's not common for our office to reject a case, but if, for example, a statute of limitations is already passed, or if there simply is no violation demonstrated by the admissible evidence, it may be a situation where we would reject the case. It's not common, but it does happen. Number 3 is the number of accusation matters for which further investigation was requested. This is in instances where the investigation is simply not sufficient, and our attorneys have reviewed the matter and then asked the board to provide further investigation to clarify or provide further evidence on a matter that's necessary. Number 4 is when the further investigation is received. That's fairly self-explanatory. If we've requested it, hopefully we'll get it from the board as needed. And then the number of accusations filed in number 5. Filed means when the executive officer signs the accusation. So as I mentioned, our attorneys prepare accusations, send them to the board. Board staff reviews them, the executive officer reviews them, and then signs the pleading and then sends it back to us. We'll serve it and then take it from there. So we have, I think, a very good relationship with the board. The board staff is very efficient in handling the review and signing of the pleadings. We get them back quite promptly, at least within 30 days on an average basis. Number 6 is the number of accusations withdrawn. There are times when a pleading is filed and then the case is, we learn through subsequent discovery that the case really doesn't have the merit that we thought it did. So occasionally a case is withdrawn by the executive officer, and that's what that means. And then number 7 is the number of accusation matters adjudicated by the Attorney General. And I did want to focus your attention on the term adjudicated because it means something specific in our office. So adjudicated means when the work of the Office of the Attorney General is complete with respect to a disciplinary administrative matter. And that can be a resolution in one of 5 different ways. One is default by failure of the respondent to file a notice of defense. Second is default for failure to appear at the administrative hearing. Third is when there's a stipulated settlement that's sent to the agency. Fourth is when we do conduct the hearing and it's submitted to the administrative law judge. And 5th is the instance I'd mentioned where the pleading is actually withdrawn, the case is withdrawn. So I wanted to make that clear because under Part B, we are to report average times for the different components of getting a case adjudicated. So the data set that we will report on in Subdivision B concerns cases that will have been adjudicated during the reporting period. and then we'll calculate the averages. So again, they asked for the average number of days receiving an accusation referral to when it's filed by the agency. I think I've already described how that occurs. Preparing a case that is re-referred. And that's a term that I wanted to point out as well under number 2 of subdivision B. In some instances within our office, if an investigation is incomplete and supplemental investigation is requested, the case is actually sent back to the agency. And that's why they use the term re-referred in that subpart number 2. In the licensing section, we generally do not send a case back to the agency, but we hold it open while supplemental investigation is being conducted. So it's still on our clock, the time is still running in terms of, what our reporting averages will be, even though the case is being investigated by the board again. So it's not really re-referred, but we will report it when the investigation is returned to us. Number 3 is again regarding settlement and how long it takes to get a settlement done. The vast majority of administrative cases are resolved by settlement. And there's nothing wrong with settling cases. It's the most efficient way to resolve cases. The respondent accepts a responsibility. The board has a finite result. And so within litigation practice in general, everybody knows what the result is going to be. And so stipulated settlements are very common. Number 5 is requesting a hearing date, how long that takes from the time the case is at issue or after the notice of defense has been received. And 6 is receiving the hearing date until the time of the hearing being actually conducted. The goal of the licensing section is to adjudicate our cases, again, using that term adjudication, bringing it to resolution. Our goal is to do that within a period of 365 days, 1 year. I don't have data to share with you in terms of how long it's taking right now for the board, but I will point out that the board's cases are more complex than some of our other cases. For example, if compared to the Board of Registered Nursing, for which we have a much higher volume, they have a great deal of cases that are much less complex. So you'll find that averages for the Board of Registered Nursing will be lower than they will be for the dental board, and that's simply a matter of the different kinds of cases that are being processed. We do our very best to move them forward efficiently and effectively. Some of the slowdowns are as a result of the nature of the cases themselves. Can you point to any of those?
Yeah, yes. We've had a couple reasons. One other thing before I get there, Linda, is on the investigations, one important point, the dental board, I don't know if I'm on the microphone.
I'm sorry. Yes.
The dental board, unlike some of our other boards or bureaus, also has consultants which review pre-screen the cases, which I'm sure everyone's aware of. There's also a delay in the investigation caused by that because of the consultant on the quality of care cases going ahead and especially on a complex case where there's multiple subsequent treaters, et cetera, reviewing a stack of records, which takes a considerable amount of time, leads to a delay in the investigation, having to maybe trigger more investigation based on whatever records that the consultant gets. So that, as far as the investigation delay, that's a component too. But back to your question, as far as the delay after it's sent to our office, a couple of the reasons for the delay are, I think Linda pointed out, one was the serial investigations. Maybe the initial complaint was filed with the board, and then it was investigated. The case was sent to an expert. It was then sent to our office. But then, you know, we get 6 months later, we get 5 more complaints against the same dentist. They're investigated. It leads to serial investigation, serial complaints coming to our office, which a lot of times for efficiency, the board asks us to combine into the same accusation, same pleading. And if we have the case already set for hearing or have the case moving along, we have to delay it because of the serial investigations and amending the pleading and incorporating it all into one pleading. That's one reason for the delay. Another reason for the delay is, as Linda also mentioned, most of these respondents have counsel, and counsel, it takes time for defense counsel to review the material, review the discovery, go over it with their client. Also, they have busy calendars and get the cases set for hearing. So that's also a reason for the delay. However, the Office of Administrative Hearings within the last year or so has implemented a requirement that we have all cases set within 6 months of the filing date. So we're starting to get sooner hearing dates. They've hired a bunch more judges, and so we're starting to get quicker hearing dates on even on our complex cases. We used to only get that on our cases that were set for hearing where there was only 1 or 2 days of hearing required. But where you have a quality of care case, it could be a longer 3 to 5 day hearing, and we're getting quicker hearing dates on those. So that is improving.
So to conclude, the first report of the Attorney General under 312.2 is due to be filed with the legislature on January 1st, 2018. The data collection period is the current fiscal year, so that will close on June 30th of 2017. Then we'll have a period of 6 months to prepare that report and file it with the legislature. Are there any questions?
Only, I think, a few of our cases have been appealed beyond the ALJ to, or something that goes on to Superior Court. Of the 5,000 cases that you see a year, how many go on to an appeal? And does your office do the representant for that?
You're right. The number of cases that go to writ of mandate and then subsequently to the Court of Appeal are a very small number. There have been some very significant ones coming from the dental board, though. So you've actually helped us to establish some very good aspects of the law through the appellate proceedings that we have handled. And yes, we do handle those appeals for the board as well. We handle the writs of mandate in Superior Court, the matters in the Court of Appeal, and if they go further to the California Supreme Court.
But that's a small number.
It's a very small number.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, were you successful in getting additional positions within your office?
No, I was not.
Okay.
We tried to, we did a BCP to try to increase the staffing of the licensing section for our DCA work. And the reason we wanted to increase our staffing was so that we would be able to bring down our case processing time. But the legislature did not agree with us. Instead, they imposed the reporting requirement. I think it will, by reporting to the legislature what our average times are, they'll get a better idea of what we are able to do, and perhaps in the future they'll be more interested in giving us more staffing to be able to bring the average case processing time down. In the meantime, we're doing everything we can to use our most efficient methods of case processing, and it's a very high volume practice, as I mentioned, and just trying to figure out all of the best ways to use our resources to tackle that caseload are the strategies that we're employing until we are able to get more staffing.
I have had the pleasure of working with Linda, and we're both putting our heads together to try to find out how we can work toward the deadline. Has anybody at any point said 12 to 18 months is not reasonable?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that's another reason the legislature is so interested in knowing what these processing times are, is to be able to evaluate what really is a reasonable case processing time. And it's, my feeling is it's not the same answer for every agency. For example, the dental board is complex. Our cases are more complex for the dental board, as they are for a few other agencies. But then others are much simpler. So I don't think it's really a one-size-fits-all approach. But we have established a goal, our internal goal of the 365 days for our accusation matters for all of our clients, and we'll strive to meet that for the board as well. But I don't expect that we will, at least not in the first year, but we'll keep trying.
What Linda and I had discussed to try to decrease that time frame on her side is when we know cases really aren't going to go for revocation, that we send over terms at the same time, essentially, that we're transmitting the case. And so hopefully that can assist her Deputy Attorney Generals to work the case maybe a little faster. So we're looking at whether or not that's going to have an effect. But if in Linda's office it's 365, that just leaves our board essentially 6 months to get all the records, get the SMEs writing their reports, complete the investigation. And I'll just say that that's very difficult to do considering the caseloads that we have in our office and the caseloads that Linda has in her office. So perhaps this reporting is going to assist both of us that you're doing. So, and of course, we continue to track that too.
Well, of course, we are probably all familiar with the adage, what can be measured can be improved. And so I think that's the point of the reporting requirement. Having the settlement terms from the beginning means that we know what the executive officer's goals are for the case. And when we know the goals from the very beginning, it makes it easier to focus to achieve those goals. So I think that will be very helpful. And as I mentioned, most cases do settle, and there is nothing wrong with settlement because it gives you a result that is certain and not appealable. And so we do strive to settle as many cases as we can within the expectations of the enforcement program.
I have just one more question. So when do the cases come off your tracking system? Essentially, I'm looking at stipulated settlements. If the respondent signs off on the settlement, it goes to the board, and the board rejects the settlement. Is that still on your radar?
Yes,
and
it is.
it's still counting?
It is.
Okay.
A case can have more than one adjudication. In other words, we may have a default, and then that'll stop the clock. Then the default may be overturned by a motion for reconsideration. Then we could potentially have a stipulated settlement. Then it could be rejected by the board. Then we could go to hearing. Then you have a proposed decision. Then it goes to the board. The board could not adopt it. And then we go, so there's a lot of things that can happen, and we continue to report on the case. So one case, potentially could have up to 5 adjudications before it's done. That would be uncommon, of course, but just as an example, it's a possibility. And we continue to report on the case until it's really, really, really done. Okay.
I have one question. So the new Attorney General is It's a he, right?
Yes.
Is he very supportive of you? Are they giving you enough support to allow you to do what you do?
Well, I have every expectation that our section will be well supported by the Attorney General. The Attorney General is very new for our office and is still establishing his executive team and his mission and his focuses, et cetera. But I have had the pleasure of meeting the Attorney General and having the opportunity to describe for him what our section does. And I have every sense that he's very supportive of our work, yes.
Are we giving him a timeline from 12 to 18 months to get on board?
I would hope even sooner, right?
Oh, good. I'm glad that's on record.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Is there any public question or comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the Dental Hygiene Committee report.
My name's Noelle Kelch. I'm here to bring greetings from the Governing Board for Dental Hygienists, the Dental Hygiene Committee of California. I really wanted to thank you for a year that has turned out to be some collaboration within the Dental Board and within the Dental Hygiene Committee, bringing forward some things that are going to continue to help the consumers stay safe. On January 4th, we met with Dr. Eric Handler for the Orange County Public Health Department and went over water testing and the importance of water testing and some of the challenges. What was wonderful in that room was to hear the solutions instead of not just focusing on where the problem was, but solutions we could be bringing forward. And right after that, we had the infection control meeting in keeping with the regulations to have our review of what was out there. And what a wonderful meeting that was. I really want to thank Dr. Lay for the cooperation and the coordination between all of us. The wonderful thing that came forward that I think is going to really help the consumer here is having a checklist online, and we talked about developing a checklist that'll have the necessary elements to know what it is we need to be doing. The documents that we looked at, what we discovered was there hasn't been a lot of changes in this last while, but getting this in a simpler form for the implementation can make a huge difference. As we talked about the water issues, we came up with a few solutions, and one of them was to make everyone aware of why we need to follow what are called IFUs, or instructions for use, that come from the Food and Drug Administration, and getting that into our verbiage, and I think that's important. I also want to thank the other part of collaboration that has happened within our two board, and that's your enforcement investigators who have assisted us in many things in this past year, and how much we've appreciated that cooperation. I want to also let you know about our hiring status. We're getting a little bit closer here, and that is that we're only missing one staff member at this point, and we have an interim director, and we are in the middle of working on getting our executive director position in place. And I want to send out a very special thank you to Fran Fran Burton, who has helped me tremendously since she has recently been overseeing that project on your end in the last few years, and also Karen for helping me, for reaching out and helping me with part of that process. It's been really a wonderful thing. As we come into 2017, we're getting prepared for our strategic plan, and that has been a nice overview. As we put our strategic plan together, looking at how we've melded together within the two boards was one thing that was really talked about, how important that is, that we work cooperatively and how that is fit together. And in closing, one of the things that I wanted to say, as you know, I travel a lot and I have to go to other board meetings throughout the United States as I'm helping them bring forward infection control laws. And one of the things that I have noted more than anything is the impact of who legal counsel is. And I wanted Spencer to know one of the jokes that we've had over at the Dental Hygiene Committee of California has to do with his professionalism and how wonderful it is to go into a meeting where his professionalism shows because he has brought the standards up. And I love being in these meetings. He has really brought the standards up. And our joke is that our meetings need to be Spencer-fied. So we try and keep your example and your professionalism with us. And I want to thank you for what you've done as we've had these meetings, as you've brought forward the needs and the laws and regulations surrounding dentistry, and we've brought forward the needs and laws and regulations surrounding the practice of dental hygiene, and watching those two work together has been wonderful. Thank you for all that you are doing as a board, and it's wonderful getting to work with you. I'm looking forward to see as we get ready for our sunset review in 2018, and we have been working on the parts that we need to do there to see how that's going to come out in making sure that we are taking care of this consumer, helping us work as a team and seeing what those needs are and what the scope of practice should be. Thank you. I'm going to turn some time over to my interim executive director.
Thank you. Anthony Lum, Interim Executive Officer. And I want to thank the President and the board members and Karen Fisher especially because she's always there for me and available. Just to let you know, in the last 6 weeks, my transition has been going relatively smooth, except for double my workload. I need some help.
I was knocking on wood, I'm sorry.
Yes, knock on that wood, yes. And with the workload that comes with it, one of our mandates is to oversee our educational programs. And unfortunately, last year, we received some complaints from the students and faculty at one of the educational programs that we have, which is specific. It's Concord Career College in Garden Grove, where their students and the faculty complained about the program. So we had to act on that and did a site visit. Actually, we did a couple of site visits and looked over their curriculum and everything. And last fall, it was the determination of the committee to actually withdraw their approval. So once that was done, if that carried through, the students wouldn't be able to sit for licensure. We did give the school opportunities to comply with everything, and at an informal conference in December with my predecessor executive officer, it came to fruition that they did do most of the things, actually everything that we asked them to do to comply, and I'm thankful to say that they are now in compliance. So everything that we pushed and asked for according to the laws, they complied with. So I just want to give you that update in case you heard of anything as far as Concord is concerned. Speaking of ADEX, when you guys were talking about that yesterday, they actually approached me last week, and we had a short meeting. And what their goal and intention is to try and come into California at the same time that they do with the dental board exam. So that was interesting news to me, and they've already looked at our laws and regulations to see how they could do that. And I've been giving them some information, and we'll provide them more information on how that process is done with our committee. I need to talk it over with Noel to see if they can present at our May meeting, so that way we can see what the details are as far as the ADEX examination is concerned. So that's on the boilerplate right now. As far as our regulations are concerned, just a couple of them to update you. We are going to be reg heavy in the near future. However, in discovering that this is our sunset year, that we have to do the report and everything, it's going to be a huge workload. And so I'm trying to taper off as much as possible the amount of regulations that we do, but I know it's important for us to go forward with them. So I'm kind of selecting. The two that we have in the works right now, one's pretty important for individuals from out of state to come in and work at sponsored free healthcare events. And currently the requirement is that any out-of-staters have to come into California to do live scan for their fingerprint clearances. And they can't do it the time that they come in to try and work, so they have to come in advance, which is just a huge expense for something that they're participating in free. So we're trying to modify that to where now we can start accepting maybe hard cards or some other means that other states provide to us for fingerprint clearances that they can do ahead of time, so when they come into the state to do the free sponsored health event, they're already cleared and ready to go. So I think that's a great benefit for them. The second is new legislation was passed last year for retired license status. So we presented language at our December meetings, and hopefully that regulation will be going forward as well. So we're creating a new category for licenses that individuals can put it on a retired status. We just have to work out the details and appropriate fee for that. The last thing I have is, again, I'd like to reiterate a thank you to Karen and Carlos, the investigative staff, because they've helped out immensely in the last 3 months that we have a new special investigator on board. He's able to call down to their unit and ask any questions, and they've been very responsive. They took a trip down to Southern California recently, and they met with the Southern California staff, and they pretty much welcomed him with open arms from my information. So I want to say thank you, and continued thanks to all of you for your cooperation. Are there any questions?
Tony, I have a question. Bruce? Okay. In your discussions with the ADEX organization at this point in time, are you discussing the acceptance of the results of the ADEX dental hygiene examination? Or are you discussing the feasibility of the ADEX examination being administered within the state of California?
At this point, they were just kind of fact-finding to see if we were open to that opportunity. The discussions didn't get into it that involved at this point, and I deferred any further discussion in that area for them to present it at the committee meeting, so that way our committee members can get a full informed information, so that way they can make a good decision on it.
The DHCC does accept regional examinations, though, right? You've
Yes.
brought on,
Yes.
how many do you have?
We have 2.
We accept REB and we accept credits at this time.
Okay.
I too would like to thank Noel and also Anthony for the work that you've done on the infection control. And I look forward to collaborating with you and the Dental Hygiene Committee of California in the future on this same topic so that we can provide better protection to our public.
Thank you very much.
I think one of the wonderful things is that her and I are working in 2 settings. So it's been wonderful hearing the regulations and the standards she has to work with, and then looking at the standards that we have within the state of California. It's been really a great opportunity to see things that we may be looking at, putting into place to bring those standards to the level of protecting the consumer as much as we can. It's been great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no additional questions, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item before we move on? Okay, seeing none. We have a report from Karen on clarification of Dental Board's provisional approval of State University in the Republic of Moldova's dentistry-based 5- and 6-year curriculum submitted by the school.
Okay, I put this on the agenda because we're starting to get calls from students who are attending the school or anticipate attending the school, the dental school in Moldova, and they're actually asking whether attending the 2-year international dental program would meet the requirement for licensure in California. So I felt it was important to put this on the board's agenda to discuss that, because the approval that was given to the school in December was for the 5/6-year program, from what I understand, and they were granted a 2-year provisional approval. So staff just needs clarification moving forward. As I understand it, there are students who attended the dental school in a 5-year program, but effective starting the last class that is entered in July will be required to have a 6-year program. As far as I know, and I'll defer to Dr. Morrow as he was the site team leader, there was no mention of an IDP program for 2 years. and no documentation was provided at that time.
Yes, the application that was received from the University of Medicine and Pharmacy of the Republic of Moldova, that was processed and approved for a site visit, and then the report was given to this board regarding the site visit's recommendation, which were accepted by the board. In the application and documentation that was, supporting documentation that was submitted to the board, there was no mention of any educational program other than the standard 5-year, which is now a 6-year curriculum. In the site visit and in the discussions with the students, faculty, staff, and administrators of the university, there was no indication or discussion regarding any program at the school that was being applied for approval other than the standard 5-year, 6-year, now 6-year program. So with that said, there was no documentation and there was no information provided at the time of the application and at the time of the site visit that indicated that there was a program other than the standard 6-year program to be looked at and to be approved. So I'm not aware of any additional program that is in existence at the university, the dental school, other than programs that were advanced education specialty programs that were not being looked at or viewed at or applied for approval to the dental board. So.
Mr. Afriyet.
Dr. Moore, if I can ask a follow-up question, and I could be misinterpreting what you're saying. Are you saying that you think there was some deception, or are you saying that this is new information? I'm just trying to get a sense of what's before us and how we should be focusing on this.
And Dr. Morrow, if I may interject, the reason this is on the agenda at this point is because staff has received calls from students who have perhaps misunderstood that the approval that was given to the school was a provisional approval for 2 years based on their 5/6-year full dental school education. So at this point, I would suggest that we're just looking for clarification. I have been notified recently also by Senator Polanco, who is the representative of the school, that there are that he may be bringing forward questions on how the school might develop a 2-year IDP program. So at this point...
This is just a status update for us.
This is a status update, and I think Dr. Morrow is just clarifying what he believes to have been reviewed by the site team.
Great, thank you.
Sure, in response, I'm not indicating any suspicion of any deception or anything. What I am stating is that we have no official inquiry or communication with the university. The only communication that we've apparently had is from either students or prospective students. So we do not have enough information to even make a very stated response to inquiries that we've had at this point. So.
Any other board member questions on this item? Dr. Chan.
I'd like to make a request for a future agenda item to review the performance of this entire program, not Moldavia, but the entire program of accrediting, not accrediting, reviewing international schools, as well as looking at the original intent, the performance of this program, and the goals for a future agenda item.
Okay, we'll take that under consideration. I see staff making notes here, so. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to open this up to public comment.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members. My name is Richard Polanco. I represent the State University of Moldova. For the record, the tag team did go out, did review. The provisional approval is a 2-year provisional. The program curriculum is a 5-year curriculum, for the record. With regards to the international program, I had made inquiry with regards to that. The history will show, both from a legislative perspective as to what the bill and the intention of the bill is with regards to international 2-year schools. It's very clear. With regards to previous opinions on the matter from your back then previous Attorney General representatives have opined. I will provide that information. Again, for the record, the university, the tag team went out, did review, and the approval and the understanding is a 5-year, not a 6-year dental implementation. We would welcome, obviously, the suggestion of looking at the intent. I think that you will find that the time has come to review that. But I want to leave today ensuring this body that it is, in fact, a 5-year curriculum that is in place, that will be implemented, and that the university will comply with all the other requirements for purposes of bringing those areas that needed to be clarified within the 2-year period of time that is granted for corrective action or additional information. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Any questions from board members for Senator Polanco?
I have a question.
Yes, Karen.
Senator Polanco, can you verify whether or not the school actually did get the report in our letter that was sent to them in December?
I believe they did.
Okay.
And so I had had an inquiry as to whether or not, and it is, they do have it.
Okay.
It's not on the single subject matter per se, it's a copy
Okay.
of the
The formal
actuals.
report.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
And
and
so
the-
I pointed it out to them that it
Okay,
is there.
I wanted to make sure that they did receive that copy, because within the report, it does state that what was reviewed, and according to the full site team, they believed that the discussion was, currently the program is, well, prior to July 1st of 2016, the program was 5 years, but now it is 6 years. So I'm not sure how the board would go along clarifying that, but based on issues we've had in the past with Dca, I think it's important to get this very clearly stated from the get-go, what we're looking at. So I'm not, I'll defer to the president and the site team leader as to how best to do that.
Well, I believe we have information from our meeting in the meeting notes and reports that indicates exactly what was approved, do we not?
Yes, but Senator Polanco, as the representative of the school, is saying that they don't have a 6-year program. And so when staff reviews applications, they're looking at transcripts for the number of years that the program essentially was approved for. So like I said, I think it's important to determine whether it's 5 years and or 6 years. Essentially, as of December 2nd, anybody who graduates after December 2nd, if they started the program 5 years ago, are accepted. If they started the program July 1st of 2016, they will be required to take 6 years.
That is not our understanding, for the record. If I recall, there was some testimony that the faculty and that the curriculum was beyond some of the training requirements. we can look at that, but the university is very clear of the brochures and the information. We believe that was reviewed by the TAG team at the site visit, reflected a 5-year curriculum. We would hope that the board moves in that direction of 5 years. 6 years would not, is not what was reviewed from the university's perspective, and I would hope again that we be given the opportunity to implement a 5-year curriculum program which would meet and has met. I think the 6 years goes beyond whatever the expectation standards are, and I would ask that this board, for purposes of clarification, adopt the, or however this needs to be remedied, it be remedied on for the 5-year curriculum that is in place.
Can I would like to attempt to add some clarity as I see it. The documentation that was submitted, the supporting documentation that was submitted with the application from the State University of Moldova was documentation supporting a 5-year curriculum. That is what was reviewed by the by staff and also was used in the site visit for the site visit team to assess the educational quality and the standards at the university. While we were there, during the site visit team was advised by the university and the School of Dentistry administrative staff that they were extending the program to 6 years. However, what we reviewed and what we approved and recommended approval with some reporting requirements was a 5-year curriculum. It was the school's expression to us that they were adding another year, making their curriculum 6 years. That was something they told us. What we reviewed and recommended approval of with reporting requirements was a 5-year curriculum. Now, whether they extend it to 6 years or whether they don't, they simply told us they were extending it to 6 years. But what we reviewed and recommended approval for was a 5-year curriculum.
I have a question.
Oh,
Go ahead. Well, so my understanding is if there is a major change in the curriculum, the school is supposed to notify us in writing. And I would consider this as a major curriculum change. So I would think that, with due diligence, we would need to ask the school to provide that information if indeed it had changed to a 6-year program. Because it is true, as Dr. Morrow stated, we approved a 5-year program at the school. And now that they've changed it, and it's a major change in the curriculum, they need to provide that to us. And we can take an action at that time.
If I may, weren't we notified of that at the time of the site visit?
It was a verbal notification only to those of us that were involved in the site visit. My suggestion is that we communicate directly with the university. We have names, email addresses, snail mail addresses for people at the university. I think it's important that we have direct communication with them regarding these issues and that we don't rely on telephone calls from students or prospective students or from a representative for the university. I think it's important that we communicate directly with the university regarding answers to these issues.
Yeah, and I would agree with Dr. Morrow on that.
Okay, so you have nothing to add, Dr. Wu? Okay.
For the record, I would also agree. I think it's a good idea. I think it's clear that the assessment that was done was reviewed on the basis of 5 years, and to hear it in writing from the university on the 6-year clarification that their intention is not to implement, their intention is not to create a 6-year curriculum. Their intention was as is, which was reviewed by the TAG team in that particular moment.
I have one final question. So as I understand it, that there are really two issues here. One is 5 versus 6 year. The other is the issue of the 2-year international program. You're going to provide us with some additional information regarding that?
Yes, that, I would be happy to.
Okay.
Now, the 2-year program, with all due respect and for clarification, that exists today in our dental schools. LaSalle was also allowed under the existing statute, so I would ask that let's review the statute and let's see what clarifications, what points may need to be clarified. We think that the history of practice, both with Western as well as LaSalle, has and does allow for a 2-year program within the existing statutes. And so I will be happy to provide all the backup and documentation and research that has been conducted on that issue.
Okay, does that provide us with sufficient direction to move forward with this? Okay, okay. No other board member questions or comments? Okay. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Okay, moving ahead. Agenda item 14, report of elective facial cosmetic surgery. Permit Credentialing Committee, discussion and possible action to accept permit Credentialing Committee recommendations for issuance of permits. And I'm still the board liaison to EFCS, having done that for a number of years and have interacted with that committee. Unless anybody has anything to add, I'll just go right ahead with their recommendations and ask for approval. There was a conference call on January 25th, 2017 to review 2 applications. I was on the call. The meeting had a quorum. There was a recommendation for consideration of an applicant from Elena Norris, DDS. The committee recommended that she be granted an EFCS permit limited to Category 2, facial neurosuctions and facial fillers. So could we have a motion to approve that application? Thank you. Okay, so we'll have a roll call on that approval, I believe.
Witcher?
Yes?
Stewart? Yes. Wu, yes. Afriat? Aye. Burton? Chan? Chappelle Ingram? Yes. Dawson? Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Forsythe? Yes. Lai? Yes. Lay? Yes. And Morrow?
Yes.
Okay. Do we actually need a motion to accept the report?
No.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I thought that the other application was reviewed, and it was determined that further documentation would be needed. And just so you know, this is a really rigorous process. It's done like applying for hospital privileges in an area. The applicants are required to submit operative reports. They have to be in the area where the privileges are being granted. You can't transfer, say, orthodontic surgery to facial cosmetic surgery because they're very different. And these guys do a really good job, so they're to be commended for what they're doing on that committee. And we look forward to having some ENT representation on there. Dr. Wong, has done what he could, but we need, the full complement of members. It's always hard to get physician representation on that. So we'll be putting out a recruitment, and there'll probably be somebody at UC Davis who'd like to serve. They have in the past. So anyway, that concludes that agenda item. So moving along, no, any public comment? Didn't see any, okay. Agenda item 17, LCP Committee Closed Session Report. Mr. Chair, Dr. Lilly.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry, exam committee report. I'm sorry, we're going to take that first, okay?
Darn it.
Actually, that's, okay. I have a different order in my binder, I'm sorry. Okay, number 15, exam committee report. Dr. Wu.
Thank you. My report is basically, we went over some questions about the portfolio examination, and there were three main issues. One was case selection for the ODTP exam, whether perio needed to have, the patient needed to have moderate periodontitis. The committee said that if the candidate so chooses to do that, yes, it must be. They also have a choice to choose other aspects of the exam since there are 6 different categories. So that's our answer for that issue. The second issue was grading for the endo exam, whether there were 2 parts to that, whether 2 examiners were required, and our answer still stands as yes. However, the first question was in dealing with a patient that comes through as an emergency patient, then there would be a new diagnosis that must be given by the candidate in order to have that stand for that part of the exam. And then the last part was a request for the exam to be paperless at the school. And our position was that the schools could choose to do electronically what they can internally, but as it stands in regulations, this has to be transferred on a piece of paper to us that the dental board has put together, and we can take this under further consideration for later to make the process paperless in the future, but for right now, that's how that stands. So I believe that was really all that I had to report, other than the RDA, RDA-EF exams, which we all talked about and that I attended. So, and I'm looking forward to further going to all the dental schools for portfolio. So.
Okay, so you're going to move to have a report accepted?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Okay, coming out of committee, I don't think it needs a second, does it?
I don't.
Okay.
That's why I was looking at you guys.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay,
think I
very
needed
good.
a motion.
There's
so-
no action required, so, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any public comment on exam committee report? Questions from anybody? Okay. Now, licensure certification permits committee report. Dr. Lai.
Thank you. LCP committee met, roll was called and quorum was established. In open session, we did review the February 26, 2015 minutes and approved and updated the Committee on Licensure and Permitting Statistics. Then, in closed session, the committee discussed requirements for issuance of a new license to replacing a canceled license and voted to recommend the board the items afterwards to the items to Legislation and Regs, Leg and Regs Committee for draft statutory legal language to allow the option for licensees to have their license reissued. So we went down, and there were 9 candidates that we considered for.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry, just a sidebar there. Please continue.
Okay. So it's okay, I can go down the
Please,
line on
please.
with each candidate?
Yeah. We need to take those.
And use initials only, please.
Yes. Okay, LCP committee met, and the committee recommends taking action on this group. First request for dentist JC, issuance of a new license to replace canceled license was considered. Board approved issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes California law and ethics and examination recommended by staff. 2, dentist ZN, also to replace an old license with new license, is considered by committee in closed session, and the board approved issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license on the condition that the applicant successfully passes California dental law and ethics. Third request was for dentist RS, issuance of a new license to replace a canceled license was considered. Board approved issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition the applicant successfully passes California law and ethics. Fourth person was dentist YZ, was to replace a originally canceled license with the condition that the applicant would successfully pass California law and ethics. 5, registered dental assisting license. This is a new license to replace a canceled license was considered. On this candidate, board approved issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition that the applicant provides a certificate of 8 hours infection control and successfully pass law and ethics written exam. 6, registered dental assistant AC, again, to replace a canceled license. Board approved issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition the applicant successfully passes law and ethics. 7, RDA assistant DF, again, replace canceled license was considered. Board approved issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition of the applicant successfully passes law and ethics. Number 8, registered dental assistant LG, wants to replace a canceled license with a new license. Board approved new license replacement by the applicant successfully passing law and ethics. Number 9, dental assistant DR, for issuance of a new license to replace a canceled license. The board approved issuance of a new license replacement by successfully passing RDA written and law and ethics. So this was the only one that was different. And
Okay, unless any of the board members disagree with the recommendations, there can be a single motion to accept the committee's recommendations.
So moved.
I'd like to pull the last one for discussion.
Move 1 through 8.
Okay,
Thank you.
Move 1 through 8. There we go.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve.
This is not coming on, so I'm just going to yell. I'm not certain what, I had questions about one where the fees had already been paid, but the person was active military. And I believe that's a fee waiver.
That's only upon initial licensure, if he's applying for the first time.
We have an motion and a second to approve 1 through 8. Okay, go ahead and call the roll, if you would.
Witcher,
Yes.
Stewart, Wu, yes. Yikes, oops, sorry.
Yikes.
Alfriat. Burton. Chan. Chappelle Ingram. Dawson. Forsythe. Lai.
Yes.
Lay. Morrow.
Okay. Okay, so regarding the one that we held, that was applicant DR.
Yes.
Could we just hear why that one was held when the others were not?
We had a discussion about her career change. So she originally, I got her RDA and then let her license lapse, and she became a correctional officer. Now, she's been a correctional officer for, I think, 14 years. And so it was the idea that because it's such a different career change, that it would be beneficial for her to review or getting back into the dental assisting scheme. If she hasn't practiced for that many years and moving from a certain an entirely different job, it would be nice for her to re-hone the skills that she learned originally as a dental assistant and maybe help her get back into the newer ways of doing things, you know, and the infection control. Well, she did have infection control and she did have some training, but I think it would be nice to see and have her be able to see new ways and maybe new techniques that maybe have changed in 14 years, and you know that dentistry has changed, it changes every 6 months. So it was the feeling of the board that, well, members of the committee, that it would be good for her to take the additional written.
Okay. Any other, yes, Fran?
On that particular one, isn't she currently working as a dental assistant? Isn't she currently in an office?
She is, I think she is guaranteed a job at an office. I didn't particularly see that she was working. I don't
think
remember.
Her previous employer was offering her a position.
So to
I don't know
answer
if
her
it's hinged
question,
on
she
if
isn't working right now.
Yeah, technically she's not, but I believe she has employment waiting for
She,
her.
yes, she has one waiting for her.
Do you remember the committee vote on this matter?
3-2.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to speak to, my position on this would be to have her just take the law and ethics exam. She did have an 8-hour infection control class, which would bring her up to speed, I would believe, on infection control, because it has been a long time since she's been working in the field. If she were to take the law and ethics, because of all of the duty changes in 2010, that would bring her up to speed for that reason. And I just believe that the written exam, you know, there's material changes and technique changes, but that varies from dentist to dentist. So if she gets working in the field, she's going to get that as she's assisting and working within the office. So I would, I would just motion for us to, can I put a motion now?
Sure.
Or because we haven't accepted it.
Yeah, that's right.
I would motion for her to do the law and ethics exam.
Okay, so the motion would be
And
to
to
reject the committee's recommendation
That's what I was thinking.
and to issue a new license to replace the canceled license upon her successful passage of the law and ethics exam.
You said it. Perfect.
So moved?
I second.
Okay. Could you call the roll on this, please?
Can I?
Oh,
can I-
any further discussion?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. I can totally appreciate what you're saying, Judy, but to me, a dental assistant that hasn't been working for 14 years, it kind of, it doesn't, it underscores that the exam is not really relevant if you let someone who's not been practicing for that long not take that. So that's what I mean, I understand that, yes, each dentist is going to be different. Yes, I could teach those skills back to someone who used to work for me a long time ago, but a lot of things have changed, and I thought that was the purpose of the exam.
Well, she has taken the exam. She just took it several years ago. And I honestly don't think that dentistry's changed that significantly in the 14 years. I mean, the materials have changed, but we're still doing the same procedures. It's not that much different. Then she's going to learn that working from, and she actually is assisting the same dentist, if she takes that job, that she worked for previously.
Well, I guess there was an issue brought up by, I believe, Dr. Morrow, and you can stop me if I'm speaking out of turn, but there are some things that you don't oversee when a dental assistant is in your office. So I would want that person to just be up to snuff on all those things. So that's just a comment.
And my other position on it is that if she had put her license inactive and then just came and activated it 14 years later, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So either she was in a different career, thought she was staying in that career, not coming back to dental assisting, and so at that point, she let her license go. And now she decided to come back to dentistry because the other career didn't work for her, and so now we're having this discussion. That's a big standpoint that I have.
I think that was before.
Well,
Okay.
Me? Okay, thanks. My concern at the committee discussion centered around the infection control issues. Yes, she has taken an 8-hour course in infection control, and I think that's good. However, my understanding is that there's a significant number of questions on the RDA written examination that has to do with infection control. And there has been some changes in infection control policies in the last 14, 15 years. And my desire for her to take the written examination was primarily to make sure that she was up to speed and up to knowledge in infection control. Even though RDAs are supervised by their hiring dentist, very seldom does that hiring dentist directly supervise infection control procedures that are taking place in the back part of the office by staff. And so I felt more comfortable with this length of time away from the industry, that she be able to verify by the examination questions that she is up to speed in infection control. So.
Yvette?
I think there's 3 mics on. Oh, here we go. One of the things that, and I had to defer to the RDA expert in this case, the exam has a 53% pass rate. Although she has been out of this profession for 14 years, I beg to differ between the person that has been out for 14 years and still paid to keep their license active. What was the difference? What was the difference there? I think we have a glitch in our system. So she had 8 hours of infection control, and probably one of my questions is, or one of the thing that popped in my mind, is that if you are a dentist and you say that you don't supervise those RDAs in the back office, well, my question is, shouldn't you? Shouldn't dentists be, should dentists not be supervising that? I mean, especially if there's a RDA that's coming back into the field. So perhaps not, but I've always thought that they did, and behind the scenes. So That's one of the reasons why I didn't want this individual, or didn't think that there was a need, because I'm comparing those that have kept their status up to date, and they come back into the field 14 years later, and then the ones that did not. So it was pretty apparent to me that we should have, voted the other way.
Dr. Lai?
To answer the question of, do dentists like myself monitor the RDAs? Well, if I hire a person that's well-trained, I am basically ensured that they should know what they're doing. It's not my job to, of course, it's my job to monitor them and watch them and make sure they're doing everything right, but that's one thing that if you have a well-trained RDA that has all the credentials, that's just peace of mind for the dentist. It's also peace of mind for the patient. If I have to say, don't do that, do this, pick up that, in front of the patient, we're not protecting, because my attention is not the best care for my patient, because my mind is diluted. So to answer that question, it's very important to have an RDA. RDAs are the most important things for us to provide proper care. I'm not saying that anything other than that. Now, as far as 52% pass rate, I don't know, to us, that's not good enough, right? So in order for us to raise the bar, so to speak, we need to put more pressure on people to try to get better and help them get better. Not say it's okay. No, you have to incentivize, you have to support them, educate them in becoming better. And that's why I voted the way I did, because we're not helping somebody if somebody really loves the profession, they'll do anything and work harder to be good at that profession. And if we support that, we have better applicants and assistants.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Dr. Wu.
I think that we're looking at this as, okay, I think that, okay, who's like undermining me? No, okay. Oh, it's you, okay.
He's got a mute button for everybody.
Oh, he's got a mute button, so this is what's happening, okay. No. In all seriousness, though, I don't think this should be looked at as a penalty, and if an RDA, after all this time, has this much difficulty passing a written exam, I don't know that that person should be licensed. And the second thing is, would you want this person to be working on you? And the other part is, how are we protecting the public? So those are my concerns. Thank you.
The RDA, just by virtue that you've earned that license, says a lot for the person's experience. A person who's been out of the field for 14 years, where's the experience? And, because a person has found or is aware of an employer who will hire her, does not give her that experience. Experience says a lot for a person's ability.
Judy?
I think in the committee, our discussion was centered a lot around infection control. And she took an 8-hour infection control course, and did an additional 2 hours of continuing education. So I'm not sure how much more we would expect for her to have. Yes, there are some infection control questions on the written exam, but I think that having that review would suffice. I mean, that's 10 hours of infection control.
Yeah, the 8-hour course is fairly extensive. Okay, if there's no comments, we have a motion and a second.
Can someone repeat the motion?
The motion on the floor is to reject the committee's recommendation with respect to applicant RDA for the issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license upon her successful completion and passage of the law and ethics exam.
Okay, so I'm going to take the vote. Witcher?
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt just for a minute? Because I'm still confused.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought that this person was going to be asked to take the RDA written exam. And law and ethics. And your position was that this person should probably only need to take the law and ethics, which she has done.
She hasn't done yet. She will before she's licensed. It's a condition of.
So are you in favor of this motion or not? Because
Yeah, I presented the motion.
She made the motion.
I made the motion. I rejected the other motion.
Move to
and-
reject the committee's recommendation to
Okay.
require her to take the written exam and law and ethics.
So your position is that she should take
Law and ethics.
just the law and ethics?
Correct.
All right.
Are we clear?
Clear as mud.
Is it clear as mud? No? Okay, yeah.
No, we're not, because now I'm confused.
Okay.
The motion is for both, right?
No.
Just law and ethics.
The motion is just
The committee recommendation was for both, and the rejection and the new motion is for law and ethics only. So if you agree with Judith, you vote yes on this. If you disagree.
No, but
then
the
this
committee's
fails.
recommendation was to reject, period.
Yes.
No.
There was not a motion to issue applicant DR an RDA license upon passage of the written exam and law and ethics exam. That was the committee's recommendation, but there was not a motion, a formal motion made.
Okay.
Actually,
The motion was,
Actually, there was a motion by the committee to move forward. So there was a motion.
But it wasn't
there was not a motion at the board level, though. There has to be a motion at the board level to accept those. Okay, and there was not a motion at the board level to require her to take both exams. The only motion was to reject the committee's recommendation and to issue the license upon her successful passage of the law and ethics exam only. That's the only motion on the floor.
So to help this through, you're bundling two different questions. Separating the question is probably a better way of handling it.
There aren't two questions being separated.
There is. You're rejecting, and then the second part is only giving the law and ethics.
That was the,
You're bundling.
that was the single motion. That was,
What I'm saying is to separate the question.
the motion does, that is not required of this motion at all. No. So again, the motion requires her to pass the law and ethics exam only.
When you get down to it.
Okay, so I'll just start the vote again, now that we have some clarity. Okay. Witcher?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Wu, no. Afriat?
Aye.
Burton? Chan?
No.
Chappelle Ingram?
Yes.
Dawson? Forsythe?
Yes.
Lai?
No.
Lay?
Yes.
Morrow?
No.
7 yeses, 5 noes, motion passes to require only to take the law and ethics exam.
Yeah, this is a discussion that occurs from time to time in LCP, and it's always kind of hard to know. So it was good maybe to bring it to the board and have us discuss it a little. So thanks to the committee for their report and for indulging us rejecting one of their recommendations. So we'll move on now. Legislative and Regulatory Committee report. Oh, I'm sorry.
There was a request to bring, Hi, Mike. Hi, Mike. Okay, so we want to put on the agenda, Dr. Morrow asked to request the chair to consider a future agenda item related to the faculty teaching permit to monitor the practice of dentistry by non-licensed dentists who hold faculty teaching positions in California dental schools. And that's it. Committee adjourned.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Leg-Reg Committee.
Okay, the committee was called to order, and a quorum was established. The May 11, 2016 meeting were approved. The next item was an informational item, and it was a copy of a tentative legislative agenda. We then moved into legislation. AB 12, Cooley, on state government administrative regulations. AB 15, dental cal reimbursement. AB 40, Cures database. AB 224, on dentistry, Thurmond, and AB 349 McCarty regarding Department of Consumer Affairs and the licensure with special immigration visas. And lastly, SB 27, Morel on licenses for military services. All of these bills, the committee took a position of watch. The next section was an update on pending regulatory packages. They were continuing education requirements and basic life support, definition for filing and discovery, dental assistant comprehensive rulemaking, determination of radiographs and placement of interim therapeutic restorations, electric facial cosmetic surgery permit application and renewal requirements, fee increase, institutional standards, licensure by credential application requirements, and mobile dental clinic and portable dental unit registration requirements. There was no, this was all were for information only and no action required on our part. There was a discussion of prospective legislative proposals, comments for items not on the agenda, future agenda items, and committee member comments on items not on the agenda, and there was no action on any of those. The committee adjourned. So I would move for accepting this report.
No action was taken, so it's unnecessary.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item?
Excuse me, Mr. President,
Yes.
doesn't the board have to approve the watch recommendations?
Isn't that our current position? Yeah, we're just maintaining, there's no change, so there's no
No,
action.
No, a lot of these
Fair
were
question.
spot bills.
Yeah, fair question.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Public comment? Okay, seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Gail, yeah.
Gail Matthews, CDA. This is just a point of clarification because I'm trying to understand the process. And so I made a comment yesterday about CDA being interested in working on the cleanup that the licensure committee was interested in doing, but this is the ledge committee. Is that, does this committee not have to give like a thumbs up to that? I'm just, from a process point of view, trying to understand. does this committee have a role in that decision?
Let me take a stab at that. I believe the motion out of LCP was to refer that to Legislative Committee, if I'm correct? Yes. And so it'll go to Leg Committee next.
I see, okay, thank you.
But also a point of clarification, because these were spot bills that we looked at, they were not bills that were left over, then I think it would be appropriate for the full board to approve that position.
Okay, so we have a motion out of committee, doesn't need a second. You want to go ahead and call the roll on that? To accept
And
the,
it is the approval of those bills that were introduced, for which the committee took a watch position.
Okay. Witcher,
yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Wu, yes. Afriat? Burton?
Yes.
Chan?
Yes.
Chappelle Ingram? Dawson? Forsythe? Lai? Lay? And Morrow.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Anesthesia Committee report.
Thank you.
Dr. Morrow.
The Anesthesia Committee met yesterday, and the quorum was taken, quorum was established. As you probably are aware, this is a new committee, inaugural meeting of the committee. And I think we had a very good first meeting. First item that was for discussion related to the Senate informational hearing, legislative hearing that took place in Sacramento on February 13 of this year. There were some of our committee members that were personally in attendance at that meeting, and they shared with us firsthand verbal reports of that meeting and their perception of that meeting. I was not able to attend that meeting myself. However, I did watch the entire video recording of the hearing. It was a little over 3 hours long, and I think it was very informative, and it was a very well done hearing, and everybody had the opportunity to express their opinions, and everybody remained agreeable to each other, even though there was some disagreement. And I think that was a great opportunity for all people to be able to share their opinions regarding this extremely important issue. The second item on the agenda was an update regarding implementation of Assembly Bill 2235, Thurmond, relating to pediatric anesthesia. The two main items for discussion related to the requirement of 2235 to establish a more specific reporting form with items required on that form. And the second part of that bill implementation was the required language or verbiage to be included in written informed consent documents for future use in general or moderate sedation. I believe that board staff is currently working on notification to licensees and also to permit holders regarding the required inclusion of specific language in the written informed consent document, and also starting in the process of developing the reporting form, like having an interim form that would be used while we were finalizing the regulations establishing the permanent reporting form when there is a death or a hospitalization of a patient. Let's see. Next item that we discussed was utilization of certified registered nurse anesthetist to administer general anesthesia in dental health care settings. Karen Karp, who I believe is one of the officials, is she the executive officer or president of the?
I think she identified herself as as a practice manager for
California Association of Nurse Anesthetists.
Yes.
Right. So she gave us a very informative presentation regarding the profession of certified registered nurse anesthetist, not only in California, but nationally. And stated that currently in California, that certified registered nurse anesthetists are able to provide their functions and their services unsupervised by physicians or medical doctors, that they provide very valuable services and at a high degree of safety. It was also pointed out that at the present time, for a nurse anesthetist to provide anesthesia services to a dentist, for dentist patients in a dental office, the dentist is required to have a general anesthesia permit. That, we believe, was written quite some time ago, before the certified nurse anesthetists were granted autonomy to be able to provide their services in California without supervision. So that's an issue that we have put on the agenda for future discussion to see where we might go with that.
Would you go back to item 4? You skipped item 4.
I'm sorry?
You skipped item 4.
Oh, did I really? I'm sorry about that. Where is item 4?
The
Sorry,
evaluation.
yes, I grabbed 2 tabs at the same time. Sorry about that. Item number 4, thank you. Item number 4 was informational, primarily having to do with the general anesthesia and conscious sedation evaluation statistics. During the year of 2016 to 17, there were 195 general anesthesia evaluations that were approved, and there were 0 failures in that process. So it was 100% pass rate on the evaluations, office evaluations. There were 6 permits that were canceled for non-compliance. There were 17 evaluations that had to be postponed because there were not evaluators available. And there were 32 that were postponed by request of the permit holder. And there were 26 permits that have been canceled by request of the permit holder. Sorry when I went out of sequence. Now we will go to number 6. Also, a little bit more on 5, I'm sorry. We also reviewed some of the pertinent code relating to the use of general anesthesia, and primarily that was in 1646. And I think that one of the things that we identified there was that every dentist issued a permit under this article shall have an on-site inspection and evaluation at least once every 5 years. Is that consistent with what is being done at the present time?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, conscious sedation and medical general anesthesia are every 6.
And also, I think an item of interest in this code section is that for medical general anesthesia permit holders, the exclusive enforcement authority against a physician and surgeon by the Dental Board of California that holds a general anesthesia permit from the Dental Board shall be to suspend or revoke the permit issued pursuant to this article. We apparently have no jurisdiction over any disciplinary action regarding this permit holder except to cancel their permit.
We can also refer them to Med Board.
Right, it can refer them to the medical board for discipline, but we have no disciplinary actions ourselves. Okay, is that right?
And the medical board takes the referral seriously. I think actually we have one. So they're investigating on their end and to see whether discipline will be warranted on their end.
Sometimes it happens when they don't have a permit, too.
Okay. Okay. And I think that pretty much ends our report. So if there are any members of the committee that have any additional comments that they would like to make regarding our committee meeting, Otherwise, I will submit that as the committee, anesthesia committee's report.
Okay, seeing that that report was purely informational, is there any public comment on that item? Dr. Atchison?
Hi, Dr. Guy Atchison, California Academy of General Dentistry. A question on the mandatory language for informed consent for moderate and general anesthesia. I'm a little confirmed. CDA just sent out a bulletin to all the members, and I think it related to Caleb's law, and it had a mandatory paragraph that I think applied just for pediatric patients for moderate and general anesthesia. And what was unclear to me is that for what's the definition of pediatric for that mandatory statement? People under the age of 18 or under 12 or under 7? A second question would be, you, Dr. Morrow, said you were discussing mandatory language for moderate and general anesthesia. Is there a second mandatory statement being contemplated for adult patients that are that would be included on informed consent? Or
Not that I'm aware of at this time. I believe it all has to do with Assembly Bill 2235, which was Caleb's law and has to do with children.
Okay.
Okay.
And the definition of when we need to use that mandatory statement is under the age of 18?
I do not believe that that has been determined at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think-
there was discussion at the time the legislation was passed. It comes down to the California age of majority, which I believe is 18. That, I think we'd probably have to look at that and come back with a specific
Again,
recommendation.
I think that that's an open item at this point, but an important one to eventually be nailed down. But I do not believe that there has been a consensus at this point in time as to what age is the benchmark.
Thank you.
Shane Garst. On behalf of CANA and the CRNAs in California, I just want to thank the dental board for consideration of CRNAs, eligibility for general anesthesia, and the conscious sedation permits. And we greatly appreciate your approach to this issue, and we are happy to supply any information that the board needs. CRNAs look forward to working with the board in the future to improve the access to care and removing unnecessary barriers to our practice.
Okay, thank you for coming forward and speaking with us about this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no additional comment, this concludes our list of general agenda items. So now we're ready for public comment for items not on the agenda. Okay. Seeing none, board member comments for items not on the agenda. Okay. Very good. Then that concludes our business for the day, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, we're adjourned.